Welcome to What I Wish I Knew, the Early Learning Guide, a podcast for parents navigating one of life's biggest milestones, starting early learning. On today's episode, we're taking a behind-the-scenes look at what happens the second you drop your child off at care. Olivia is joined by neurodiversity affirming practitioner and early childhood expert Emma Rattenbury. You may know her from her social channel, Emma in Early Childhood.
Hello and welcome to our podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us, Emma. We really appreciate having you on.
Thank you very much for having me.
I would like to start off with a acknowledgement of country first of all. So I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of this land. I'm joining you from Boonwurrung land and pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that acknowledgement to people joining us today. So we are going to have a good old chinwag about what happens behind the scenes
Yes.
when you enter a centre. So you are an ELC as well, so you're a teacher.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I've been in the sector for, just over 20 years now.
Oh, amazing. So you've definitely got a lot of experience then, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's been, lots of stories, lots of, interesting moments throughout my career, definitely.
Yeah, well, in our last couple of podcasts, we spoke to Dr. Billy Garvey about, what to expect when you're doing a tour and what to expect on the lead up. And then we also spoke to Jen Muir about what happens in the first few weeks. So now is going to be the inside scoop about what happens next and what happens in the day, because obviously a lot of families won't see all of that and what we do every day with the children. So let's give parents, an honest review. What happens? What do we do? What is early learning and why is it, not just playing around, and why is it not just babysitting?
Yes, definitely much more to it than that, that's for sure.
So when we think about myth busting, especially when people think, what do you think when people go, oh, it's just playing all day?
I actually think, and particularly because I've completed my master's in child play therapy, it's not playing all day, but even if it was, play is actually the way that children learn and understand the world that they're within. So I think that playing all day, it might seem like playing is lazy or just having a bit of fun and not actually working, but there is so much work that goes into play, not only from the children, but from the educators creating the environments that are rich for children to play in, but even being really critical about, our role within the play or how we're supporting children to play with each other or what they're learning through play. So that's usually what I think, or what I say when people say, oh, you just play all day. I go, well, it's hard work playing all day, even if that was what we're actually doing. Yeah.
I agree. I think I always say that to families, like, when children go to work, to childcare, if they go to school or whatever it may be, that's their work. And we know as adults going home after a long day or after a week and you're exhausted, it's exactly what happens to children as well. There's so much going on in their minds and they're learning how to figure out the world around them and how to get through social interactions and sharing and all of these things. It's huge development milestones that are happening every day.
Absolutely. And play doesn't go the way we think it's going to go either. Even when we're playing as adults, a game or something like that, if we're watching our favorite sport and people are playing games, there's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of, even all this effort and hard work, and things don't work out the way that you thought they were going to. And even after playing, even if it's something that you really enjoy, it can be quite exhausting. So it comes with its ups and downs, that's for sure.
Yes, it definitely does. What do you reckon surprises parents the most about early education?
Maybe the diversity of the work potentially as well. And I think, so I'm a parent obviously as well as an early childhood educator, and they're definitely two very different things, I think. It's definitely to be expected unless you've worked in the sector. You could never really understand a sector for what it is. But I think sometimes the difference between a group setting and the home setting can be probably one of the biggest things to learn in terms of your child will be one of many children within the space as well. And that can bring, lots of great things, but some challenges sometimes too, in terms of maybe needing to be just like a little bit more flexible, or things might need to look different or change. And sometimes parents might think that, oh, they won't do that because that never happens at home. Like, food is one, for example, or they'll never eat that, or they'll never sleep on a little bed on the floor or anything like that. But they've got other children around them, and sometimes children just like to follow other children. And so parents can get definitely surprised with the 4 bowls of lentil curry that they had when they're struggling to feed them plain pasta at home, that's for sure.
I think I was just having a conversation literally, I think yesterday with a family, which was like, excuse me, my child had salmon pasta. I am going about the, pasta with butter every day because
Yeah.
they would never in
Yeah.
their life eat that at home.
Never. No, we've actually sent home leftovers of the exact same meal that they smashed at lunchtime, and they get it at home and they're like, no, thank you. So, the learning environment and how children respond to that is, I think, it can be quite a surprise for families.
Yeah. Oh, definitely it can be. And Emma, so you're incredibly good at showing parents what early learning is and what it really looks like. I've been loving watching all of your skits on Instagram.
Thank you.
Very relatable.
If you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Exactly. But it's all in obviously very lighthearted humor because we all absolutely love our job and love what we're doing every day. Don't get us wrong, it can be a hard day, that's for sure. We all have hard days.
Yes, that's for sure.
But when we think about, it's not even just the play side of things, but when we think about the programming and what goes on when we are planning the day and what the room setups are looking like and everything that we use. And I think a lot of families won't understand how much paperwork, for starters, goes into it.
Yes.
How much planning and observation. So let's have a quick chat about the programming side of things as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, that looks very different for each and every service, even for each and every room within a service. It can look quite different based on, the age of the children that you're working with, but also the group of children that you're working with and the group of educators that you're working with. But obviously, we're all working through embedding the early years learning framework and working alongside the learning outcomes and really trying to, create environments and interactions with children that are going to support their development in each and every one of those learning outcomes. And it can be very tricky to try and create a process that is meaningful, but that encompasses that holistic development of not only your child at the service, but all of the children within the service, because they're at such a different part of their development where, 6 months can be such a huge difference. A 3-year-old is very, very different to a 3.5-year-old. They're developing at such a rapid rate. So, when we're programming and documenting children's learning, there needs to be a lot of flexibility. There needs to be a lot of, critical thinking about how we can do things differently but meaningfully. So it's not just words in a document, that they're actually meaningful for the child and for us as educators to really think about our practice and what we're beginning to know about the children that we're caring for within our groups. But also, I guess, from a family's perspective, that their input and, reading them and their opinions and their ideas are so meaningful as well. I know educators will get quite excited when they see a comment on their post because, a lot of work goes into that. And obviously some services have different expectations compared to others, but, you can feel like you've won a trophy sometimes when parents actually, interact and say, oh, thanks for this piece of documentation. That means a lot.
We are consistently, to any parent who is listening, comment on our posts that we put on Story Path or anything. We want to hear.
Anything, we'll take anything. Just, thanks for that, or that's you've really captured my child beautifully. It is really meaningful for educators when they see families valuing the work that we're doing.
Yeah, and parent input goes into every single aspect, of what we do every day when it comes to might not just be the commenting on the documentation that we're posting, but it goes into the philosophy of every centre. It goes into the menu. We want families and different recipes to put into that. It goes into our quality improvement plan, which every single centre has as well. It's such a huge aspect, so important as well, because obviously, parents are the first educator and then we're there to enhance everything from there. So Yes.
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the quality areas in terms of connecting with families and
Yes,
community.
it is.
So anything that families offer in terms of, feedback or different ideas, is always welcome.
Yes, no, I definitely agree. So let's have a little kind of capture of what a day looks like. And I'll ask, what goes on at your centre, Emma? What does a little snapshot in the day of Emma's centre look like?
It really depends on the day and what room you're in. So I'm in a support role, so I'm really lucky enough to go across different rooms across the day, and see how they flow. So really lucky to work in a service that really values that slow pedagogy and nice smooth transitions for children coming in the morning. So starting bright and early at 7:30 in the morning, we'll have families start to come in and drop their children off in the morning. So family grouping for the first probably half an hour before children start to break out into their separate rooms. Hopefully, if the afternoon before has worked well, environments will already be set up perfectly ready for the day. But sometimes there's a few different experiences that the children might help the educators kind of put out or choose what they might want to interact with or play throughout the day. And I really like the mornings, seeing people come in, and we're also really big believers of the circle of security approach. So having educators as anchor points throughout the room. So when families are coming in, they know what to expect and they know where educators are going to be. So, we'll have educators in certain parts of the space, and one will, be that floater throughout, kind of, catching everything around the side, so that sometimes drop off is really, really tricky, even for children who have been coming to the service for many years. Sometimes we just have a bit of a sad morning. And so it's just one less thing parents have to worry about or be unsure about as to where to drop their children, or, they're kind of looking around going, oh, I don't know, where to go or what to do. So having, really clear spaces for where educators will be in the morning to drop off is really important. And then throughout the day really depends, again, in the room in terms of, what small groups we might be offering throughout the day, depending on their age, making sure that they remain developmentally appropriate. But some rooms might have some more planned group times. Some might be a little bit more spontaneous throughout the day, or a bit of both. And then meal times are usually quite progressive as well, in terms of we have food available for children. We have food available for children all day. So, particularly in those older groups, having some crackers and fruit available for children, because, children just feel hungry, or they might want a little snack on things throughout the day. And yeah, lots of just, free flowing play, but guided play with educators sitting alongside. So finding that nice balance between children controlling their play, but still having access to educators to sit alongside them and support them with their play and their social connections.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love that. Actually, going back to what you just said about the circle of security as well, I think that is, one of the most important things. We do something called key educator relationships, but
Yes.
it's, I'm sure you've probably heard of it before as well. But that, if for anyone who's listening who doesn't understand what that is when a child does start, they will get not just assigned to one educator. When you go through the orientation process, they will bond with one educator specifically. Just like adults, we don't bond with absolutely everyone, and that is completely fine, because different personalities will gravitate towards different people.
Yes.
And then that key person will be the person who knows their child back to front.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think it's really important for families to understand how much time we really do concentrate on getting to know each child that comes into our care so well. What would you speak to that with when it comes to getting to know a child? How well do you know them?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an approach that I've practiced as well. And I think sometimes one of the misconceptions is like, oh, what if that person isn't there that day? And then the children kind of collapse because they can't cope. When we know that that key educator approach is still giving access, of connection with relationships with all of the educators in the space. We're not just, blocking that child off from all of the educators, but it's on the premise that once they build that strong foundation and that sense of safety in the space, they're able to then branch out and develop secondary attachments much more easily. And so in those early moments, it is really important to get to know children's, personality and, maybe if they're a bit of a risk taker or if they like to sit back and consider things, if they're really young as well, their routines and their rituals. So, when their nappies changing, and I know that sometimes can feel like a bit of a menial task, but those moments of care are so important for children to not only develop that sense of trust and safety in the space, but to be able to connect one-on-one and, whether it's a song or, looking at things around in the room and those sorts of things, that we take those moments of routine and care quite seriously. And that's where a lot of the learning happens, in terms of being able to trust one another and saying, oh, I'm just going to grab a wipe, and actually talking it through with a child as well, so that they're involved in that moment of care as well, that they're not going to be shocked, or that it is a moment you're not, singing out to an educator across the room whilst you're changing a nappy, but that's actually a really important moment of care, where we're respecting the child's autonomy and their body. And so, that's when, when you do have that key educator approach, you can really start to develop that deeper, authentic knowledge of a child, and therefore be able to better plan and create an environment and a daily routine that, suits their needs.
Definitely. And I think, there's those children, especially, I've had them in the past where you've had them 5 days a week from the nursery room, and now they're in the kindergarten, graduating to go off to school. And, I'm every single year at kinder graduation, I'm a blubbering mess.
Yes. Yeah. My first year actually in my traineeship in that last week, and I just realized I had tears streaming down my face, and I was just like, no one told me about this part of the job. But you develop, for some children, you're with them more waking hours than sometimes they're primary caregivers at certain parts of their, development. And so you absolutely do develop these, connections with children, that sense of pride when they, achieve the goal that they've been, trying so hard to achieve, or to be there for them when they're feeling a bit down. There's children now I still see when they're like, almost adults. But I can still, all I see is the 6-month-old and myself waving at the garbage truck. That's what I see when I see that 16-year-old. So these children absolutely leave an imprint on our hearts, and they're quite special.
Definitely, I definitely agree with that for sure. And it also gives us the opportunity, and especially when we're going into that kinder years as well, they develop so much and they've changed so much. And especially that last year, you will see all of these different changes happening, where we can really hone into where they need that additional support, and where they are, either exceeding or a little bit, behind in that as well, which is completely fine. But we can come up with these strategies because we do know these children so well already.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. When we think about what educators are really doing during the day, because I don't think I've had a parent pick up their child without emptying their shoe with sand.
Yeah. Or their pockets with all these random things in it.
Exactly. We haven't even been in the sandpit today. How is your shoe full of sand?
No idea.
What would when you see a child building with, say, blocks, what are you thinking in that moment? What are they learning? What breakdown for a family? What are they doing in that moment?
Oh, could be like a million different things. You think blocks, you think, they're just learning to balance a block on one over another. But, there are so many different concepts like patterns, even, the different colors of the blocks, like engineering concepts, like balancing, they're sharing the blocks with their peers around them. They might be trying to make like replicating a specific type of building, or, a type of shape as well. Communication, so receptive and expressive language if they're chatting to someone about what they're creating. Recall memory if they're trying to do something that they've done before. Like so many different opportunities of learning within that. And I think when we look at the foundations of what that's building for later on, in terms of then what problem solving can help with, problem solving is a really important skill for, say, mental health later on in life, in terms of, just being having a problem pop up in terms of, oh, that's not really great. I'm not feeling really great about that. Okay, well, what can I do about that? Oh, that one didn't work. Oh, but I know that when there's problems, there's multiple options. So I'll try this instead. So, problem solving, might seem like a really simple concept when children are playing with blocks, but it's how they build their foundational knowledge for what they're going to use,
Yeah.
later on in their life.
And I mean, that's what we're there for as well. It's such these key moments of learning. I think I've had families go like, "Oh, do you guys give homework?" or "Why don't you give homework?" or "Why can't they write a whole sentence yet?" But that is not necessarily what early education is about. It is about the social intelligence for starters, because they're going to go off into a schoolyard where there's one teacher to however many children spread across an oval and a playground. They need to learn how to navigate those social situations and how to get themselves out of that in a safe and friendly way. And not only just the social development, but it's also the independence as well. Can they take themselves to the toilet and, wipe themselves properly? Can they get themselves a drink of water or notice when they're cold or hot? These are the aspects that is so fundamental to their school readiness journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, their concept of who they are as a learner, and that's something that they will take even beyond school. I think sometimes we get so caught up in that transition to kindergarten or prep or, year one or whatever it is in the state that you're living in. And so you're like, oh, it's getting them ready for school. But it's actually school only goes for 13 years if you stay for the whole thing. And not everyone, might even go to university after that. And so what we actually want to be instilling in children are, these positive learning dispositions that they will take even beyond school, because school isn't for everyone sometimes as well, and that doesn't mean that there's necessarily, an inherent problem within that child, that they've just got a different pathway coming for them. And so we want to be able to have children leaving our services knowing that they're creative, that they're resilient, that they are great problem solvers, and that if they don't know something, that doesn't mean that they are a bad learner, but that there's someone there that can help them figure it out.
Oh, that curiosity of learning. It's something that
Yeah.
you always hope that those kids will hold on to, because they are such enthusiastic learners in kindergarten. But I mean, me, myself, I was not a school person.
Me neither. Me neither.
But, didn't hold me back. I'm running my own centre now. So it's
That's
not
right. That's right.
necessarily
It
the
doesn't
be all
stop
and
it.
end all.
Exactly. Yeah, we've all got different pathways to walk
Yes.
down. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think, well, we've kind of already covered about the, social interactions, especially, but, say when two children are arguing over a toy per se, and I mean, this will also vary in which age group we are in. What is our role during that time when children are arguing?
Again, it can be really dependent upon, the children that you're working with. Sometimes it isn't, it's stepping back and just kind of watching and seeing, what happens. Sometimes children are actually quite competent in, working through some of these, little struggles or squabbles and disagreements, and that actually you can just kind of step back and see how it kind of pans out. So sometimes it's not necessarily jumping in straight away. It's just kind of keeping a close eye and seeing, what might be happening there. And then sometimes it is coming in and just actually, narrating what's happening and seeing then again if it's just being a little bit more clear, or being that translator in between saying, oh, so you want this, but you want this as well. I'm wondering what we can do about that. Sometimes even just that little, translation can spark an idea for a child, and they go, oh, well, how about, and they kind of, again, fix that little disagreement on their own. And sometimes it is needing to, go that step further again and saying, well, this child had it first, and I can see that you really want it, but they were playing with that. So how about we let them, continue to play with that? And how about we find something, else that we can play with, for example, if they're, arguing over a similar resource or something like that. So yeah, there's different stages of, how involved we would get. But generally speaking, ideally, it's not necessarily just being demanding and telling the children what to do. It's giving them as lot of opportunity as possible to try and solve that problem themselves, but being, I guess, the person in the middle to kind of regulate that situation and keep children, connected to be able to maybe make that decision that's going to, produce a happy ending.
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, giving them that empowerment to actually to sort out that situation themselves, because we don't need to interfere to every single little squabble that may happen. Obviously, for a safety reason, yes, we would 100% intervene in that. But giving those children the opportunities to organise themselves and to sort out their own little squabbles, it's again a part of that school readiness journey, because a lot of what we're doing every single day is with that goal in mind, to get them ready for that school playground and to get them
Yeah.
ready for that classroom as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think, look, parents may sometimes think that we are just supervising, and especially when it comes to outdoors or wherever it may be, when they think about yard duty or what teachers do at school during recess and everything. But it's a little bit more complex when it comes to early education, when it comes to supervision, and active supervision. Can you
Yes.
paint a picture of what that looks like?
Yeah, so again, obviously there is the safety element of supervision in terms of, children are in the areas that they're allowed to be in, they're not hanging off the roof or anything like that. Like that's, the very basic view of, exactly, that's right. That's the very basic view of supervision in terms of everyone is, where they should be. Physically, everyone looks quite safe. That's all great. But that's only one kind of safety. But what we really do in early childhood education is create a sense of safety for children as well. And that's not about fence lines or, crash mats and those sorts of things. That's the, overall feel of the environment. And so for children, that might be, knowing when there's a bit of, and, educators, when they have been doing it for quite a while, are very, skilled at doing this in terms of knowing that something's brewing in the area, in terms of, oh, I think, those voices are starting to get a little bit more high pitched, or, oh, there's a bit of extra movement happening over there, and those sorts of things. So ideally, that active supervision is not just kind of standing back with your arms folded like this, but it's, playing an active role and even communicating to children, saying, it might not even be verbal, but it might be just a bit of eye contact or a hand up or something like that, a bit of a non-verbal gesture towards children to say, hey, you're right, like, do you need me, that kind of thing. And also lots of communicating with the team as well, in terms of if you have a indoor and outdoor program, it's, hey, they're coming in there, or hey, that teacher's in there at the moment, they can help you out, and saying, oh, such and such is coming over, they've just got a question to ask you, and those sorts of things. So the best supervision is really dynamic like that. It's not just thinking about, general safety, but it's thinking about the space and where children are moving in and out of, but also the energy in the room and how they're feeling. And the more active we can do that, and the more involved we can be, the quicker it is to, put out those little spot fires, but also the safer that children are feeling, because they're always feeling connected to a safe person, even though they might not be involved in their play, but they can look up and they can see someone and they can sense that, oh, if I need them, they're there. So I'm feeling safe and I'm feeling looked after, because I know all I need to do is sing out and someone's going to be there. So that's why, ratios and those sorts of things are really, really important, so that educators aren't feeling overwhelmed and they're feeling that they can do that, as freely as possible.
That's it. And it comes down to, like, when we talk about the active supervision, as you said, each educator will have an area in the play space about where they need to be. And that's in consideration with, what we can see, what we can hear.
Yes, because every environment's so different, sometimes if it's a purpose-built centre, sometimes people who designed it, like, I don't know what they were thinking putting this here, but anyway, we just have to kind of work with it. Like all these little nooks and crannies, which seemed great at the time and they looked beautiful, but from a supervision point, it's a bit tricky. So sometimes it's like, okay, we might need to close this area down for the moment, to keep the space a bit safe. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, look, my centre is 2 houses that were converted into a childcare centre. So we are the absolute opposite of purpose built.
Yeah. It can be very, very tricky.
Yes. But, it's not only just about thinking where we are. We have done the supervision plans, the risk assessments, the strategies behind it, the way that every single play space is laid out, and this is in every single centre, is thought about no blind spots as well. We have the supervision mirrors, so supervision across the room. It's not just that yard dutying, it's not just that standing back. It's an active part of whatever we're doing. And I don't know how many times in a day you count in your head how many children are there.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that's right. When we
Constant
have,
round.
the times of the day where we do, the head checks, but it's more than that. I think we do that, yeah, consistently throughout the day. And particularly, if there was a bit of a running game or something a bit fast paced, and you're like, oh, I'll just quickly do one because that was a bit, chaotic. So, yes, counting, we're very good at that as well.
Yes, oh, we very much are, aren't we?
Yes.
Um, and well, I mean, even my next point, we've already kind of covered it about the relationships that we have with the children, and the relationships we have with their families. And I think when I do a tour as well, because obviously, being a director, I'm in the office more. I'm not necessarily in the rooms, although I do like to be in the rooms as much as possible because I get bored in the office. I want to go and play in the sandpit. And families will walk around, they'll be like, how do you remember every single child's name? And I'm like, well, I'm better at remembering children's name than I am with parents' names sometimes. So, through Good Choices, which is our campaign that we're doing, we are helping families feel more confident in their choices. And it's about learning what quality looks like in every centre. It will be different, it'll be the same, but I think it's such a broad aspect of what quality looks like. There's so many different areas to quality, and I mean, we can go through obviously the national quality standards, and everyone will have their own rating of quality, but it also comes down to even more than that as well, because some people will be exceeding in that, some people are meeting in that, and that's absolutely fine as well. If a family was to walk into your centre, what are some of the things that they should notice?
I think instinct is always something that you can't, yeah, put a price on, and no one could rate that as well, like in terms of, how you're feeling within the space. And it's really, that can be quite individual for a family too, because what might, feel like matches you and your family might not match another family. I think that's totally fine that each service is going to have a different feel. Some might, be, yeah, some of those buildings and things like that might be a little bit older, but they have a homely feel that a family might be looking for. For some, it might be something with a bit more, new resources or something like that. So I think walking in and just getting a feel for the room of, and how you're interpreting it can be a really great indicator of, well, okay, this is feeling nice. Like, this is something that I think, could match what we're kind of looking for. And then obviously, it's the conversations that you're having with whoever's doing your tour or your orientation as well. So that might be a room leader, it might be, the nominated supervisor, the educational leader, it really depends on who's doing that. And again, that's, how that relationship is feeling and how, I guess, heard you're feeling as well. But talking about, some things that I would be kind of listening out for is about how they work to develop those safe relationships with children as well. It's great to, yeah, learn about the curriculum and the planning and the documentation. Those conversations are quite normal to have in those early stages. But, things like the key educator approach or mentioning something like circle of security, I think, how much they put value on the relationships and the sense of safety within the space is something that, I think can be a great indicator of what that service values, in terms of the care and the environments that they're providing that the children within their space.
Things parents worry about as well, and I think there's so many different aspects of when I say that, because I mean, especially in the recent years as well, through the reforms that are happening and through everything that's happening within the industry, because we are going through a huge change at the moment, but a lot of it is going to be for so much for the better, and it does protect educators and children for that matter. Some of the things that families might worry about, so when it comes to, I reckon, the health and safety and the policies that are behind that. Some of the things to ask when you are doing the tour as well is what are your child safe practices and what are your child safe policies as well. How do you implement that throughout the room? Because it's not just something that we speak to the families or what we do, but how do we implement that with the children as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, even the language that we with using with children in terms of body safety and those sorts of things, particularly as the children are getting older. But again, like as I was mentioning, within the nappy change times as well, that's when we already start teaching body autonomy for children. And I know it blew up in the news a while ago in terms of being misrepresented about asking children to change their nappy. And it got like, oh, well, what if they say no and those sorts of things? Again, we wouldn't just say, okay, no worries, you just sit in a dirty nappy all day. That's not what we're saying.
There's ways around it.
Absolutely, that's right. Like you say, well, how about, well, I can see you're playing. Like there's so many different ways that we do that, but that was the purpose of, involving children in that, so we feel like they have control over their body and they know that it's their body and that it's something that they can always advocate for, and that we are instilling that in children in terms of, how to keep their body safe and to, know about that their body is theirs and theirs only. Up into the preschool room where we have really open conversations around, there's different children's books that are all age appropriate as well. There's lots of different books like the underpants rule and those sorts of the underpants rules and things like that in terms of, how we can support children to advocate for their own safety, but also other things like, children's voices. So even including children's voices in how we write policies, or we've even included children's voices into recruitment and having children, ask educators questions in interview processes and things like that, involving them in different policies and having a children's committee and things like that. How we value children's independence and their autonomy within the space links back to children's safety as well, because we feel like the more that we give them a voice in child appropriate ways, the more power we are giving them, that they can, keep themselves, they know what's right and what's not. And so, and it's a reciprocal relationship in terms of, they can always come to us to ask for help, but being really mindful about, obviously all the work that we need to do and all of the training and making sure that we're supervising and those sorts of things. But, how we can also support children to, become the best advocates for themselves too is really, really important.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that's also another aspect that I don't think a lot of families that won't have a lot of experience in early education will realise. It's not just our Cert 3 or diploma or bachelor's or master's, whatever the degree or diploma you may have. It's the ongoing training that we are doing every year. So there is mandatory training that we do on a yearly basis.
Yes, yeah.
And that covers all aspects. And now there is also the national training that we're all doing as well. So It is every single year we're continuously bettering ourselves as educators to ensure that we are up with the times, that we are keeping it as safest environment as possible, so that when families do drop their child up to us, we are creating that safe place for them, and we are creating that, it's not just about the education, it's about the well-being of each child that comes into our care.
Yes, absolutely. And they're questions, again, that, families can always ask in terms of, the policies and procedures around, how many educators they have in the space, and making sure that, educators are always within sight and sound of each other and those sorts of things. Yeah. And, child wellbeing registers and all of those sorts of things are things that, families can definitely ask on tours or orientations.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's have there's a few rapid fire questions that we'll do. Yep. So whatever that comes to your mind. Okay. What if a child doesn't eat?
Oh, well, actually, I've always been able to support children's eating sometimes. And look, we have different children who are experiencing ARFID and, sensory sensitivities and those sorts of things. So, hopefully working with a kitchen that is really flexible and understands children's individual needs. So I've had some children who all only have 2-minute noodles and, arrowroot biscuits and those sorts of things. So,
buttered sandwiches.
Absolutely. A flexible service should be just wanting to, create safe and, food experiences for children. And sometimes, that includes just having really plain foods that, they're safe foods for children, but always working with the family and maybe any other early intervention specialists to, create safe experiences with food to potentially build on their safe foods.
Yes, definitely. What if our child bites?
Oh, that's one of those things that Like, I guess
So
in the film, just
normal.
like, yeah, I know, but with, and I know what it's like as a, as a parent, it's more like, like, whether your child's being bitten or biting, it can be really distressing. And some children, just go through that phase, and then they go to, up into the preschool room, and it just kind of fades away, and there's never any other developmental concerns. Some children just go through that phase. But, obviously if there is a bite, obviously we're supporting the child who's bitten and the child who did bite, and letting those families know, immediately. That's the kind of immediate reaction. But if it's, becomes a continued pattern of behavior, it's trying to understand what might be going on underneath that behavior. So could it be sensory? Is it, just supporting them to, with their expressive language? Is it staying close by? Like I said, I've had a child on my lap bite another child on my lap. Like, it literally can just happen like that, unfortunately, sometimes. So,
Yeah,
it's
I've had
again,
pretty
a
much that
multi-stepped
exact
approach.
situation happen before.
Literally just happened. I'm like, great, I can't wait to explain this one to the family, like, because it's, you think, no, that didn't happen. I'm like, it really did. Like, it can just happen so quickly, unfortunately, particularly in that 2 to 3 room. But yeah, it's looking at all of the things that might be underneath that behavior, rather than just focusing on the child and the bite itself.
Yeah, that's it. What if my child's shy?
I think, again, that's where that key educator approach can come in really handy, in terms of just understanding that children develop their sense of safety and belonging in environments at different paces than others, and that's totally fine. So not feeling like, children are pressured to, go out there and be outgoing and that sort of thing. Some people, that's just their personality and that's who they are, and they'll forever be that person who's just a little bit more reserved, and that's totally fine. So again, trying to establish that safe relationship and connection with an educator and the rest of the educators, but also, coming at it from a strengths-based lens as well, in terms of, well, what are that child's strengths and what are their interests, and how can we support them to engage in those. So yeah, they might be a little bit more reserved. That's part of their personality, but that's only
Yeah.
a small part of who they are.
Yeah. And then last one, what if they don't make friends? It's a
Oh,
tricky
this
one.
one, obviously, I'm a big fan in the neurodivergent, so I'm autistic ADHD. So I have a very broad view of socializing and friendships and things like that. I mean, from a general typical development point of view, it's quite normal for children to not stick to a particular friendship group in those early years as well. They're still switching here and there. So, and there can be a real difference between children who are desperately trying to find a friend and maybe need support in connecting, and children who just aren't bothered, like just really like having time in their own zone, and just doing their own thing, or they maybe prefer connection with the educators over children, in which case we can always offer them connections with their peers. But again, yeah, if some children just, it's not for them, they just prefer to play on their own, and that's just, yeah, a different way that children present. And I think even as adults we can relate to that. We know people who are just introverted and just like doing their own thing and just popping out every now and then, but a bit of a turtle, like, right, I'm heading back in now, I've done my party, that's me gone for 6 months, see you later. Children are no different. So of course, if they're coming home saying no one will play with me, and they're feeling really lost in that, that's something we can certainly work through, in terms of supporting them to try and find some safe connections with their peers. But it's not necessarily something to be overly concerned about. Some children just prefer to do their own thing sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, look, if every parent could spend 1 hour behind the scenes of an early learning space, what do you think would be the most surprising thing for them? And I was really thinking hard on this one.
Oh, it's a really hard question. I just think
It
the
is.
diversity, just how much can happen in an hour.
Yeah.
Like, because sometimes when you look at your watch and you think, oh, well, we've still got 50 minutes in this hour, you just know how much is going to happen in that hour, and just the diversity of it, I think, as well. And yeah, like, I think if you haven't worked in a room with, depending on what room you're in with, 10, 15 children at the same time, and obviously large amounts in the 3 to 5 space, you
Mm.
couldn't possibly imagine just how much goes on, and sometimes how quickly things can go south or sideways sometimes too. I think that the diversity of the space and just the overall busyness. And I think if you're watching from the outside, even when rooms are really regulated and everything's flowing really smoothly, there's still a lot going on, It's a really fascinating space to work in, very dynamic, and no 2 days are the same, that's for sure. No
No.
2 hours are the same.
No, they really aren't. I think I've had like families ask me that before, or when they come in for a family day to help out with the show and tell or whatever it may be, and they spend an hour in the kinder room, and they come out and they're like,
Yeah, I don't know how you
How-
do this.
yeah, they were like, I didn't realize 4-year-olds talk like that. And I'm like, yeah, some of the things that come out of them now.
Absolutely, I know, and the stories
hilarious.
as well. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know if your mum would want you to tell us that. Actually, like, even just little funny arguments that might happen. Nothing serious or anything like
Yeah.
that. But
Or the amount of
like,
pregnancies we get told about when they're way too early
oh,
to know as
absolutely,
well.
I know, and it's so, and you just kind of like, oh, they had a great. How are you feeling? Is everything okay?
Anything you need to-
Is there
anything you tell
anything
us?
like that? Yeah, they we get all sorts of stories, and even if it might not be explicit, sometimes it just pops up in their play, and you're like, oh, that's a really interesting. I wonder where that's kind of come from. But
Yeah. And then I don't know if we've probably have already covered this as well, but the last question that I'll ask you is, what do you think is one thing you wish every parent knew before walking through an early education's door?
Oh, that's a really good question too. I think the importance of relationship in general, and that can mean lots of different things. The relationship that the educators can have with your child, but also the importance of the relationship that you have with your educators. And it's not uncommon to have little hiccups along the way for there to be miscommunications, because, as I said, that environment is so dynamic, and sometimes at pickup you think you've said something clear and it's gotten lost in translation and those sorts of things. And that having those open and honest conversations are really, really important, as long as they mean, respectful on both sides. That and that when you're working with a team and you're wanting to do the best for your child, and you're working with a group of educators who want the same for your child, that those open and honest conversations can make such a difference. And if there's anything, like, don't let it fester. If there's something in, don't feel like you're being a whinger or you're complaining or anything like that. Just come in and have a chat and say, hey, I'm not sure, can I just, talk about this? And, hopefully, if it's something that, the educators can explain and give you some context about why that happened or what was missed and those sorts of things, that, you can come back together. But the importance of being on the same page, for you would just want the best for the children in the space. And if that's the foundation that you're working from, usually you can work most things out. Yeah.
I that is such, I think that's the best answer you could possibly give, because I think it doesn't matter if you're at the world-class early learning centre, we are all human. Still.
Absolutely. Yeah, hiccups happen. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And hiccups can happen. And the reality is we have, 22 children in one room. There will be little instances that happen, but it's the, how it's handled, it's how it's communicated, and it's also how we reciprocate that feedback as well.
Yeah.
Always
Absolutely.
have a policy that, if we don't get this feedback, we can't work on things. And, everyone will make mistakes, but it's how we deal with them from that point on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's, responsibility on both sides to be open and honest and respectful. And, when you can get that right, then, there's usually no problem too big that you can't overcome. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Emma, thank you so much. This has been such a valuable conversation, and I think it's definitely given the inside scoop to an early learning centre.
Just a slight, it's just
exactly.
a little look into it.
I hope that every family can get something out of this, and as we have said, always come and free. My words are lost on me already, and it's the middle of the week. But always come and speak to anyone in the industry, because we're always open to come and have a chat. So we appreciate you coming over. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to What I Wish I Knew, the Early Learning Guide. For more episodes and information, jump onto first5years.org.au.